I came home from work on a Tuesday evening with sore feet and a cold coffee still in my bag, and no idea that my life was about to be rearranged without my permission. The front door was unlocked. Voices echoed from down the hall, bright, easy laughing that didn't belong to anyone I recognized. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door and followed the sound. I stopped walking the moment I reached my bedroom. The door was wide open. Standing inside, holding a pink dress against the wall like she was deciding where to hang it, was my cousin Chloe. Not visiting. Not passing through. Moving in. My framed college degree was leaning crooked against the hallway wall. My laptop bag was sitting on top of two black trash bags stuffed with my clothes. My nightstand lamp was on the floor. My mother was folding a towel on what used to be my bed. She didn't look up. "We gave Chloe your room," she said. Easy. Calm. Like she was announcing dinner. I just stood there. "You what?" My father appeared in the doorway behind me, arms folded. "She needs it more than you do. You're 27. Figure it out. My name is Emma Carter. I'm 27, I work remotely as a financial analyst, and until that Tuesday evening, I genuinely believed my parents still saw me as their daughter, not a convenient arrangement they could rearrange when someone better came along." Those 4 words hit harder than everything I had seen that evening. Not, "We should have warned you." Not, "This is temporary, we're sorry." Not even a basic text. Just, "Figure it out." As I stood in that hallway looking at my belongings in garbage bags, something cold settled in my chest. This wasn't impulsive. My parents hadn't panicked and acted without thinking. They had planned this while I was at work. Sitting through video calls, submitting reports, answering emails, and the whole time, they were packing my room and handing it to someone else. I turned back toward the room. Chloe gave me a small, uncomfortable smile and looked away quickly. I didn't blame her. She was young. She had said yes to what must have seemed like a simple offer. She didn't know what it was costing me. But standing there watching her carry her things through my doorway, I felt something shift inside me, quiet and clear and final. This was about far more than a bedroom. 6 months earlier, I had moved back home. Not because I was struggling, I had savings, a stable salary, real options. I had been buying a condo when my engagement ended, and I decided to pause everything and breathe. My parents suggested I come back. "Save your money," my mother said. "No point paying rent somewhere else when you have a home here." So I trusted them. I came back. I paid $600 in monthly rent, which they asked for and I gave without complaint. I covered groceries twice a month because my mother would pause at checkout and glance at me until I stepped forward. I paid part of the internet and water bills because my father mentioned once that costs had gone up. I thought I was contributing. Showing appreciation the way you did when someone gave you a soft place to land. My mother used to joke at dinner, "At least one child actually helps around here." I always smiled. Standing in that hallway now, I heard that sentence differently, not as a compliment, but as a record. Evidence of what I had been providing without ever asking whether I was respected in return. I had been contributing to a house where I could be bagged up and replaced on a Tuesday. Chloe had arrived in town 3 days ago. 3 days. She wasn't fleeing a crisis. She wasn't in danger. She was 22, freshly finished with a short college program, and looking to be closer to the city for what she called opportunities. My parents hadn't mentioned any of this to me. Not a text. Not a call. While I was at work for 3 days, they had decided my room would serve someone else better. Chloe reappeared in the hallway clutching a box, clearly unsure where to look. "I really thought they told you," she said quietly. I believed her. This wasn't her fault. She had accepted an offer that sounded harmless from her side. But here was what struck me as I stood there: the decision hadn't been rushed or careless. They had waited until I was reliably gone for the day. They had packed my things, stacked them in the hall, and had Chloe settled before I walked through the door. That took planning. And the fact that they had planned it, carefully, without telling me, said something louder than anything they had actually said. I was not someone they felt they owed a conversation. My parents offered me the basement. My father said it like it was a generous solution. You can sleep on the couch down there while Chloe settles in. Just temporary. I walked down the stairs and looked around. The couch was old and caved in the middle. There was no door at the base of the stairs, just an open frame leading into the hallway. No closet. No private bathroom. The small window near the ceiling let in almost no light, and along the wall by the water heater, dark stains spread up from the baseboard that I was fairly certain was mold. I stood there for a full minute. My mother appeared at the top of the stairs. "Don't be dramatic, Emma. It's temporary." I looked at the mold again. I thought about $600 a month. About the groceries and the utility bills. About sleeping on a sunken couch without a door while my cousin organized my closet upstairs. "No," I said. "Just that. No." I walked back up, past my mother, past my father watching television, and went straight to the hallway. I picked up one trash bag in each hand, grabbed my laptop case, and walked out the front door. No yelling. No dramatic speech. Not yet. I booked the cheapest decent hotel I could find, 20 minutes from the house, clean sheets, working lock. That was enough. I sat on the edge of the mattress and ate crackers from the vending machine down the hall because I hadn't eaten since lunch. Then I cried. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind, where your face stays still and the tears fall anyway, and you let them because stopping them takes more energy than you have. I wasn't crying about the room. A room is just walls and a door. I want to be clear about that. I was crying because I could finally see what I had refused to look at for 6 months. My parents hadn't asked me to come home because they wanted me there. They asked because I was useful there. The rent helped. The groceries helped. My quiet, agreeable presence helped. The moment someone else fit their plans better, I was bagged up and told to manage. My phone buzzed on the bed. A text from my mother: "Don't make this bigger than it is." I stared at it. Then I set the phone face down, opened my laptop, and pulled up my banking dashboard, not to act yet. Just to look. To remind myself exactly where I stood. I stared at that text for a long time. Don't make this bigger than it is. I actually laughed, a short, dry sound that bounced off the hotel walls and disappeared. Because I was sitting in a hotel room at 9 in the evening eating crackers, with my belongings in garbage bags in my car, and my mother was asking me not to make it bigger than it was. I turned the phone face down and opened my banking dashboard. Not to do anything yet, just to look. To remind myself clearly of where I stood. The numbers were fine. Savings solid. Salary steady. I had real options. I took a notepad from the desk drawer and started listing everything I currently contributed to the household. Rent. Groceries. Internet share. Water bill. I wrote each one down in plain black ink and added them up. The total surprised me. Not because it was extreme, but because I had never once added it up before. I had just paid. Month after month, without tracking, without asking whether any of it bought me basic consideration. I looked at the number on the notepad for a long time. Then I opened the autopay section of my dashboard and began reading every recurring line from the very beginning. Canceling the autopay items took about 4 minutes. I did it the way I handled most things, one line at a time, no rushing, no unnecessary emotion. The internet contribution. The water bill backup. The grocery delivery subscription I had added because my mother said it was easier. Gone. 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 Then I scrolled further. There was a recurring transfer I had nearly forgotten, a deposit into a separate linked account. Not my savings. Not my checking. A holding account I had opened 2 years ago for a specific purpose. I sat back and looked at it. 2 years ago, my father's contracting business had hit serious trouble. A major client hadn't paid, his credit line was stretched, and he needed to refinance a business loan to stay afloat. His credit profile alone didn't meet the bank's updated collateral requirements. He came to me privately. Just the two of us. My mother wasn't in the room. I had recently received part of an inheritance from my grandmother, not enormous, but meaningful, and I agreed to let a portion serve as collateral support for his refinancing. We never discussed it again after that. Not once. I had simply moved on and let it fade to the back of my mind. Until now. I stayed in that hotel chair past midnight, working through what I could access, account terms, the collateral documentation, the forms I had signed 2 years ago. My name was still attached. Which meant I still had standing. Obligations. And rights. I wasn't angry when I decided to call the bank the next morning. There was no moment of wanting to make things difficult. That's not who I am. What I felt was quieter. This was a financial arrangement I had entered in good faith, and with my living situation completely changed, I needed to understand my current position clearly. I called at 9 the next morning from the hotel room, still in yesterday's clothes, lobby coffee in hand. I updated my mailing address to a P.O. box I set up online that morning. Then I asked to review all documents attached to my name and requested that compliance correspondence be directed to me going forward. Routine. Professional. Necessary. The bank representative paused after I finished. Ms. Carter, she said carefully, we've actually been trying to reach the household about some updated compliance requirements. I'm very glad you called. I wrote down the reference number. Thanked her. Hung up. And sat very still. I knew enough about financial agreements to understand that banks don't casually mention compliance when everything is going smoothly. Something had shifted on their end, something flagged, something unresolved. Because my father had never updated anything. He had assumed the arrangement would sit quietly in the background forever, the same way I had sat quietly in the background. The bank had apparently been sending notices to the house for months. No one had responded. I worked from the hotel room that morning, emails answered, 9:30 call attended, client notes updated. My work didn't care that my parents had upended my life, and neither did I. That had always been something I controlled. By noon, my father called. The first call from him since Tuesday. Not to ask where I was sleeping. Not to ask if I was okay. Did you change something with the bank? No greeting. Just that. I kept my voice even. Yes, I said. Silence on his end. The uncomfortable kind, the kind that means someone is doing math in their head and the numbers aren't working. He didn't ask what I had changed. He didn't ask why. He just said he'd call back later. He hung up. My mother called an hour after my father. She was already crying when I picked up, which might have worked on me 6 months ago. But I had spent the previous night listing everything I had quietly given without counting, and the tears felt different now. You're hurting the family, she said. All of us. I kept my voice level. Did you think about the family? I asked, when you packed my things into garbage bags while I was at work. Silence. I paid rent here. I paid bills. I bought groceries. I helped Dad with the bank when no one else could. And you couldn't text me before moving my things out. She began forming an excuse, something about Chloe needing stability, something about me being resilient. I didn't let her finish. I have to get back to work, I said. I'll talk to you when I'm ready. I hung up. She called back twice within 10 minutes. I didn't answer. I wasn't punishing her. I was just done managing her emotions on top of my own, which was something I had been doing for so long I had never noticed it had a name. Taking care of everyone else's feelings while quietly swallowing my own was a habit so old I had mistaken it for kindness. Chloe messaged me that afternoon. She had found my number through the family group chat and sent something short and careful, the kind of message you rewrite several times before sending. Emma, I'm really sorry. I swear I thought they had talked to you first. I didn't know it was this serious. I read it twice. I believed her. Chloe wasn't the problem here. She was 22, she had been handed something that looked like a simple family favor, and she had no idea it was balanced on top of years of unspoken imbalance. She hadn't caused any of this. But I also didn't have space to manage how she felt about a situation she had directly benefited from even unintentionally. So I left her on read. Not out of cruelty. Out of self-preservation. I was handling my housing, the bank situation, my own emotions, and a full work schedule all at once. I had nothing left for anyone else's guilt right now. What I noticed, though, was that by evening the family group chat had gone unusually still. No nightly check-in from my mother. No forwarded meme from my father. Everyone had gone quiet. Good, I thought. Good. By Thursday, the extended family had gotten involved. My aunt, my mother's older sister, called while I was making dinner in the hotel kitchenette. I picked up, because I had nothing to hide. She opened with, "Your mother is very upset." "I know," I said. "You need to think about how this looks." "I've been thinking about how a lot of things look lately." She pushed forward in her smooth, reasonable voice. "Emma. Families go through hard patches. You can't pull the rug out because your feelings are hurt." I took a breath. Then I told her everything. Calmly and completely. The rent. The grocery bills. The utility payments. The collateral arrangement I had signed to help my father. The garbage bags. Long pause. They did what? The mediating tone was entirely gone. The room was never the point, I said. Then what was? Whether they considered me at all before making decisions that affected me. The answer was no. The room just made that impossible to keep ignoring. She was quiet. "Emma," she said slowly. "I didn't know about the money. What you did for your father." The bank called my father directly on Friday. He called me right after, and this time the controlled flatness I had heard Wednesday was gone. He sounded like someone who had walked confidently into a room and found no floor beneath him. The compliance issue was not small. Over the past 2 months, the bank had sent 3 notices about updated documentation tied to the collateral arrangement. Because my name remained attached, my acknowledgement was required as part of any resubmission. My father had not responded to a single notice. Whether he had missed them, avoided them, or assumed they'd resolve on their own, I don't know. But they hadn't resolved. The bank now had a hard timeline. Without updated documentation, the refinancing terms were up for review. That meant potential rate changes. And because my father had built his business on tight margins, a rate adjustment wasn't merely inconvenient, it was genuinely dangerous. He didn't say any of this clearly. He circled it with vague words: paperwork, timing, complications. But I understood what he was really asking. He wanted to know if I would cooperate. I told him I intended to be thorough and accurate about everything attached to my name. He said he'd be in touch and hung up. My parents invited me to dinner on Saturday. The message came from my mother, warm in a way that felt like something she had borrowed quickly and put on before stepping out the door. "We'd love to see you. Come tonight. Your room is available. Your room is available." Not, "We were wrong." Not, "We're sorry for how we handled this." Just a quiet reset. The room offered back like a transaction, everything returned to the arrangement that had worked so well for them. I thought about Tuesday. About the trash bags. About my degree propped crooked against the hallway wall. About my mother folding towels without looking up. Then I typed back that I had plans and couldn't make it. She replied almost immediately, "The room is clean. Everything is back the way it was." I didn't respond to that one. Because here was what she didn't seem to understand: I wasn't in a hotel because I had no options. I had several. I was in a hotel because I had finally stopped trying to fit myself into spaces that only opened when I was being useful to someone. A freshly made bed wasn't going to fix that. What I had been missing, for longer than just these past weeks, was the feeling of being someone worth considering before a decision was made. On Sunday morning, I called Patrice. She was the realtor I had worked with briefly 8 months ago, before I paused my condo search after the engagement ended. She remembered me right away, got to the point quickly, and sent me 3 listings within an hour of the call. I looked at all 3 that evening from the hotel bed. The third one stopped me. 4th floor, corner unit, 2 bedrooms. A kitchen with real counter space. Windows on 2 sides that would fill the whole place with morning light. Priced at $305, within my range, actually below it. I walked through it with Patrice on Monday afternoon, still in my work clothes, laptop bag over my shoulder, still technically living out of a suitcase. I stood in the empty living room and looked at the light coming through both windows at once. No one else's moods pressing against the walls. No footsteps above me. No sounds to interpret. No passive texts waiting on my phone. Just space. Quiet. Mine. "What do we need to do to make an offer?" I asked. Patrice pulled out her notepad. I had saved carefully, planned steadily even when I paused everything. My pre-approval was still valid. Everything was already in order, because somewhere in the back of my mind, I think I had always known I would need it one day. My father called that evening and he was not calm. I had heard him annoyed before, dismissive, short-tempered. But this was different. This was the voice of someone who had lost control of a situation he hadn't known he was in until it was already moving without him. "You are punishing us," he said. "That is what this is. You're punishing us for one mistake." I sat in the hotel chair and kept my voice steady. I updated my address. I asked the bank to route correspondence to me. Those are things I should have done a long time ago. You know what this could do to the business, Dad. I paused just long enough. I helped you with the business when you needed me. I signed documents without fully understanding them because I trusted you. I paid rent in a house where I apparently didn't matter enough to be warned before my room was given away. He started to speak. "I'm not punishing you," I said, cutting through it clearly. I'm just no longer protecting you from your own consequences. Silence. Long this time. He hung up without goodbye. I sat for a moment, then opened the email from Patrice with the offer documents attached. I read every line carefully, signed where indicated, and sent everything back before 10 o'clock. My mother posted in the family group chat the next morning. She didn't use my name, but she didn't have to. It was one of those long paragraphs about the pain of children forgetting what parents sacrifice, about homes that always open their doors deserving loyalty in return, about people who walk away when things get hard. I read it once. Then I put my phone down and made coffee. I had learned something important over the past week. The emotional bait my mother laid out only worked if I picked it up. And I had been picking it up my whole life, apologizing quietly, smoothing things over, adjusting myself until everyone else's discomfort disappeared. I wasn't doing that anymore. My aunt called later that morning. Her tone had changed since our last conversation. She had been talking to other family members, gathering the full picture. I didn't know about the loan, she said. What you did for your father's business. Most people didn't. We kept it between us. She was quiet. Emma. You have been carrying so much for this family. I know, I said. But I'm setting some of it down now. She didn't push me back toward what my mother needed. She just said, good. Patrice called me at 4:15 on Wednesday. I was reviewing a client report and almost sent her to voicemail. Something made me pick up. Emma, she said, and I could hear a smile before the words arrived. Your offer was accepted. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was surprised, the offer was fair and the unit had been listed only 12 days. But hearing it said out loud, officially, with my name attached to it, your offer was accepted, landed somewhere deep and quiet inside me. Okay, I said. My voice came out smaller than I expected. Closing in 3 weeks, Patrice said. I can push for early possession if you're ready to move fast. Yes, I said. Please do that. I hung up and sat back in my chair. The report on my screen blurred slightly. I blinked and found my eyes were wet, which surprised me. I thought I had finished crying on the first hotel night. But these tears were different. Not loss. Not anger. Not exhaustion. Relief, the kind that had been sitting in my chest so long I had stopped noticing the weight. Until the moment it began to lift, and I felt exactly how much space it had been quietly taking up all that time. I closed the report and gave myself 5 minutes. Then I went back to work. The bank sent my father a second notice that same week. I know because he forwarded it to me without a single word attached, just the document, subject line unchanged, second compliance notice, action required within 14 days. 14 days. I read through the notice carefully. The bank was requesting resubmission of the collateral documentation with updated verification. My signature was required on 2 of the 3 forms, given that my name remained listed as a supporting party on the original agreement. Nothing they were asking was unreasonable. They simply needed me to be present in a process I had originally agreed to participate in. The difference now was that I was no longer willing to do it quietly, on someone else's timeline, without clearly understanding every detail. I forwarded the notice to the financial advisor I had worked with during my condo pre-approval and asked her to review everything with me before I responded to anything. I want to be honest here, this was not about making things harder for my father. This was about the fact that I had signed documents 2 years ago without independent advice, out of love and trust, in a private kitchen conversation with no witnesses. That trust had been shown to me, very clearly, to be something my parents were willing to use without consideration for what it cost me. I was not going to make that same mistake again. Chloe left the house about 10 days after I did. I found out through my aunt, who mentioned it casually, the way you mention unremarkable news. Oh, and Chloe's moved to a friend's place in Westfield. Things got uncomfortable for her. From what my aunt had gathered, and she had been quietly collecting more information than I'd given her credit for, Chloe had felt increasingly uneasy as the tension between my parents and me escalated. She was young. She hadn't come looking for conflict, and she found herself at the center of something that had been building between us for years without anyone naming it. She hadn't started any of it. She had just happened to be the last piece that made everything undeniable. So she packed quietly, thanked my parents for the offer, and left without making a scene. My mother texted me about it. Now Chloe is gone too. Are you happy? I didn't answer. Because no, there was no part of this that felt like winning. A fractured family isn't a prize. I wasn't collecting damage or celebrating anyone's discomfort. But I also wasn't going to apologize for a chain of events that had started the moment my parents decided that packing my belongings into garbage bags was an acceptable way to treat someone who lived in their home and paid their bills every month. My parents asked to meet me in person. Not demanded. Not assumed I would show up at a time they had chosen. My father actually called, let it ring long enough that I knew he wasn't going to hang up before I answered, and asked whether I'd be willing to sit down with them somewhere neutral. A cafe. His word, asked. That single word stopped me mid-breath. I couldn't remember the last time either of my parents had asked me for something without the assumption tucked inside it that I would simply say yes without needing to be considered at all. I told him I would think about it. Then I actually did, for 2 full days. Not as a strategy. I needed time to understand what I wanted from a meeting like this. Whether I was ready. Whether there was anything I still needed to say out loud or whether I was better off just living through my own choices. I talked it through with a close friend who had known me through most of this. She asked one question that I kept coming back to: what would make this worth showing up for? Not a perfect apology. Not everything repaired or returned to how it was. Just honesty. Real honesty, without layers of excuse underneath. I called my father back and said yes. We met at a small cafe near the library, quiet, neutral, public, exactly as my father had promised. They were already seated when I arrived. My mother's hands were wrapped around a mug. My father's coffee sat untouched. He was sitting up straight, the way you do when you're bracing for something you know is coming. I ordered tea and let them begin. My father spoke carefully at first, clearly rehearsed, a little stiff. He talked about the pressure on the business, the bank notices he had let pile up while avoiding them, the room decision being rushed and badly handled. Then he said something I hadn't prepared for. We didn't think about how it would feel for you, he said. We only thought about what was easiest for us right then. My mother picked it up from there, quieter and less prepared. She talked about how used she had gotten to me always managing, always adapting, always being fine. I stopped asking if you were okay because I assumed you always were. That wasn't fair. I listened to all of it without interrupting once. Then I said what I had been carrying for longer than just these past weeks. I needed parents. Not landlords with emotional conditions attached to everything. Neither of them argued. For the first time in longer than I could clearly remember, they sat with something uncomfortable instead of smoothing it away. I moved into my condo on a Thursday morning. Patrice had gotten the possession date moved earlier, and I had a long weekend ahead to settle before the next work week started. 2 movers had the boxes from my storage unit up to the 4th floor by noon. I stood in the middle of the empty living room while they brought the last load in, and I just looked at the light. October light, soft and golden, coming through both windows at once, spreading across the barewood floor in wide warm squares. No one else's schedule in the air. No footsteps above me. No sounds to interpret. No passive texts waiting on my phone. Just mine. The movers left. I opened the one box I had labeled first in capital letters when I packed it. Inside was my framed degree. The same one that had been leaning crooked against my parents' hallway wall the evening everything started, propped at an angle like it too had been startled by what was happening. I found a nail. I found a hammer buried in the second box. I hung the degree on the wall across from the windows, stepped back, straightened it once, and sat down on the bare floor. I smiled. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, "We're proud of you." I set the phone face down and stayed on that floor a while longer, in the quiet, in the light, not needing to respond to anything yet. I didn't move back home. I want to be honest about how this ended, because stories like this don't always close with hugging and everything forgiven. Mine didn't close that way. My parents restructured their finances over the following months. With help from a financial advisor I pointed them toward, because even then, I couldn't fully stop pointing toward solutions. They worked through the compliance documentation on a revised timeline. My involvement was limited to exactly what was legally required of me. I gave it clearly and without drama. The business stabilized. Not because I rescued it. Because they did the work themselves. My old room sat empty for a while. When I visited for the first time months later, on a Sunday afternoon, on my own terms, with my own car in the driveway and a time I had chosen, I walked past the door and glanced inside. Empty. Furniture unmoved. No one had touched it. No one mentioned it. Because by then, everyone in the family understood what that room had actually been about. It was never square footage. Never about Chloe or timing or inconvenience. It was about whether I was someone worth considering before a decision was made that affected me. And that answer had changed the morning they said figure it out, and I actually did. I drove home along a route I had chosen, to a door with a key only I held, to a place where my degree hung straight in the morning light. Turns out, I did figure it out. Just not the way they expected.